Ethan Hale had spent most of the past 7 years focused entirely on raising his daughter, Lily, after his ex-wife walked out without a backward glance. Dating had never been a priority, and the idea of a blind date felt more like an uncomfortable chore than a romantic adventure. But his sister, relentless in her matchmaking attempts, had set him up with someone she swore he would click with. So here he was on a chilly Saturday evening, wearing a pressed shirt for the first time in months, running a hand nervously through his hair as the knock came at the door. He opened it to find Claire, a tall, graceful woman with warm hazel eyes and a hesitant smile that carried both charm and caution. She looked like she had dressed with care but not extravagance, a soft wool coat framing her face against the cold. Ethan was just about to offer a cheerful hello when she leaned slightly closer, her voice low and trembling, and whispered words that made him freeze in the doorway, "My kids are in the car." For a brief, suspended moment, his mind caught on the fact, kids. Plural. This wasn't something his sister had mentioned. He wasn't upset, but he was thrown off balance, the expectations of a quiet, adults-only evening shattering in an instant. In that brief pause, memories of his own struggles as a single parent, late nights with a feverish child, the loneliness of doing everything alone, flooded back. Kids, he repeated softly, searching her face. She bit her lip and nodded. 2. I didn't want to scare you off before we even met. Ethan's expression softened as understanding replaced surprise. He stepped aside, holding the door wide, his voice gentle. Bring them in, it's too cold for them to be waiting out there. Claire's eyes lingered on him for a moment, as if testing the sincerity of his invitation, then she turned and walked toward the driveway. A minute later, 2 small figures appeared, one a boy of about 5, clutching a toy car, and the other a little girl no older than 3, clutching her mother's hand. They entered shyly, glancing around the modest, warm living room as if stepping into a different world. Ethan closed the door against the winter air and realized that this was no longer just a date, it was an unexpected crossroads. Tonight wasn't going to be about small talk and candlelight, it would be about whether 4 hearts could start to beat in rhythm. Dinner had been planned for a cozy Italian restaurant downtown, but as soon as Max, Claire's 5-year-old son, spotted Lily's colorful stack of board games on the shelf, those plans dissolved without a fight. Can we play? He asked shyly, holding up a worn box of Candy Land. Claire looked at Ethan with a half-apologetic smile, but he only shrugged good-naturedly and pulled the coffee table closer to the couch. I guess we're changing the menu, he said with a grin. The children's initial awkwardness melted quickly under Lily's confident instructions, her voice taking on the authority of a game master. Emily, Claire's youngest, nestled beside her brother, her wide eyes following the moves with quiet curiosity until she began giggling each time someone landed on a sticky licorice square. Claire, sitting on the couch with her coat finally unbuttoned, seemed to relax for the first time that night, her shoulders no longer pulled tight with nervous energy. They've been through a lot, she murmured during a lull in the laughter, her voice low so the children wouldn't hear. Their dad isn't around. It's just been us for a while now. Ethan nodded slowly, meeting her gaze with understanding. Lily's mom left when she was 2, he said softly, the words carrying the weight of old wounds. So, yeah. I get it. They shared a quiet moment, 2 strangers bound by the same invisible thread of single parenthood, before the kids' chatter pulled them back. By the time Ethan had ordered pizza for delivery, the game had turned into an animated free-for-all, with Lily teaching Emily how to cheat just a little so she could win. When the doorbell rang and the smell of warm mozzarella filled the room, the children crowded around the table, eating in a tangle of little hands and happy crumbs. Ethan noticed how Claire watched them, her eyes soft, almost disbelieving at how easily they seemed to fit into his home. And when Emily climbed onto his lap without hesitation to help him read the pizza box, something shifted in his chest, an unexpected warmth that wasn't just about attraction but about connection. This wasn't the evening either of them had envisioned when they agreed to meet, but as he looked around at the laughter, the mess, and the comfortable chaos, Ethan realized he didn't want to be anywhere else. After dinner, the children naturally gravitated toward the living room, where the fireplace glowed softly, its gentle crackle filling the comfortable silence between bursts of giggles. Lily had taken it upon herself to read one of her favorite storybooks aloud, her voice animated as Max and Emily curled up on a blanket at her feet. Claire sat beside Ethan on the couch, her hands wrapped around a mug of steaming tea, the flicker of the fire casting a warm light across her face. For a while, they didn't speak, just watched the three little ones in their own small world, the quiet peace between them saying more than words could. Eventually, Claire let out a slow breath and broke the stillness. "I almost cancelled tonight," she admitted, her eyes focused on the children rather than him. "I was scared. Dating as a single mom, it's hard. You never know if someone will see your kids as part of the package or as a reason to walk away." Her voice was steady, but Ethan heard the undercurrent of years spent being cautious. He turned toward her, his gaze steady. "They're not baggage," he said, his tone firm but gentle. "They're your world. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be in it." Claire blinked, her eyes glistening just slightly before she smiled faintly. "You talk like someone who's been there." He gave a small chuckle. "I have. And I'll be honest, when you told me they were in the car, I froze for a second. But then I thought, maybe the best people we meet aren't the ones who come alone. Maybe they're the ones who bring more love with them." She didn't reply right away, but her hand brushed against his, hesitant at first, then settling there as if it belonged. The crackle of the fire and the soft rhythm of Lily's voice reading seemed to fold them into a bubble of warmth that neither wanted to leave. In that quiet moment, Ethan realized something had shifted, not just between them, but inside him. This wasn't just a date anymore, it was the tentative beginning of a connection that could change all their lives if they were brave enough to let it. By the time Claire began gathering coats and boots, the clock had crept well past the children's bedtime, yet none of them seemed eager for the night to end. Max gave Lily a high five, and Emily, eyes drooping, clung to her mother's leg until Ethan bent down and gently offered to carry her to the door. She didn't resist, just rested her head against his shoulder as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At the doorway, Max surprised him with a quick hug, his small arms wrapping tightly before he darted back to his mom. "Thank you," Claire said quietly, her eyes meeting Ethan's in the dim porch light. "For tonight. For not running." He smiled faintly, leaning one shoulder against the frame. "I don't run from things worth holding on to." Her breath caught just a little at the sincerity in his voice. They exchanged numbers, the unspoken agreement that this wouldn't be their last meeting hanging warmly in the air. As Claire buckled the children into the back seat, Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her every move, a strange sense of longing settling over him. When she finally started the car, she gave him a small wave, and he lifted his hand in return, holding her gaze until the taillights disappeared into the night. Lily padded up beside him in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "I like them," she said simply, and in those 3 words was the kind of childlike honesty adults often overcomplicate. Ethan rested a hand on her shoulder, smiling softly. "Me too, kiddo." Later, lying in bed, he replayed the evening, not the way he had expected it to go, but in many ways, far better. There had been no candlelit dinner, no polished first-date small talk, just laughter over board games, pizza crumbs on the coffee table, and the quiet trust of children who felt safe enough to curl up on his living room floor. Somewhere in the middle of that, he had felt something rare, an understanding, a possibility, the faint outline of a future he hadn't dared to imagine. When Claire had whispered, "My kids are in the car," he'd thought it was a complication. Now he realized it might have been an invitation, to a life not just fuller, but richer in ways he had almost forgotten were possible.